The Green Bay Packers got hot in 2023 as a young roster grew up right before our eyes. What are they capable of in 2024? We're examining the state of the Packers roster today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who make Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
Joe, I'm going to throw myself under the bus here. Do you remember, I guess I won't start with this because it'll spoil what I'm about to ask you. The Washington Post. Is that Washington the state or Washington, D.C.?
I don't know the answer for certain, but I would assume it's D.C.
You are correct.
Okay.
And I, until yesterday, for some reason,
no, you didn't.
Always thought it was Washington State. I'm like, wow, what an obscure state to have such like a prominent newspaper.
Okay.
Do you remember when the Commanders, that whole snafu was like coffee mugs or something like that they were selling like out? I don't know if it was the actual team or like a vendor, but it was like the Washington Commanders, and it had the Washington State outline.
Yes, I 100% remember.
You remember this? It was like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
I felt like that guy.
Right, you were guilty.
I said I got the wrong Washington,
and that's hey. Listen, if you can make a mistake on the Super Bowl rings, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
give yourself a little grace.
I guess. At least I didn't get the facts wrong on the hardest playoff run in the history of mankind.
How did this come to a head for you? That's my question. What led to this revelation for you recently?
I forget exactly how, like, it was like a story came across the timeline or something like that. And I don't remember why I like looked further into like a part of the page or something like that. You were just like scroll around and get like the site map for a website or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happened to click like the right button and read what popped up. I'm like, oh, it's DC.
I mean, and not to like to further kick you while you're down. I mean, you kind of live in the area, like.
No, I do. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty close. It's less than 2 hours away. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say you should add that one. All right. Well, it's tell on yourself Tuesday here.
What do you got?
Give me 5 minutes. I'm sure I'll do it.
Okay. I'll ask you again at the end of the show. I'm telling yourself or something.
We'll see.
We're going to talk about the Packers, though, in the meantime.
I have something, but not right now. Let's get into the Packers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Green Bay Packers got hot. I think you pointed out yesterday on Twitter they were 6-3, made the playoffs. Right?
3-6, yeah. Them and the Rams.
3-6 made the playoffs.
Yeah,
both them and the Rams. And then somebody else followed up and said another team. Was it the Bucks were 4-7?
Christian Paso, yeah, the Bucks are 4-7. So you're never out of it in the NFC, baby. Let's go.
The NFC. What a great place to be, and that's exactly where the Packers are. You probably feel like you're not going to be 3-6 this year with the Packers, with the momentum that they closed last season with. First year not with Aaron Rodgers in forever. And Jordan Love, after doing the Aaron Rodgers plan, comes in and catches fire in the back half of the year and plays in an immaculate second half of the season. And we're going to look at what the Packers have done this offseason to kind of build upon that. And if you're new to the show, we look at every team. We put all their players in buckets, whether that's cornerstones, quality starters, adequate starters, replacement level starters, quality depth, practice squad caliber players, non-roster caliber players, incomplete evaluations, or rookies. And there's numerical values that is attached to all of that. Everything's weighted positionally as far as the grand total that we get when we grade your roster. And then at the very end, we put a coaching lens through it as well to kind of help further influence the scoring. And that gives us our power rankings as far as where the teams are at going into the season. So, Joe, this Packers team last year, they kind of did the thing that we don't ideally like to see with a lot of developing players around the developing quarterback with a first-time starting quarterback. I think you saw some of the growing pains of that early in the year, but man, things really snapped into place for Packers when it got late in the year.
Yeah, and normally we have a tendency to get to the quarterback piece of the conversation a little bit later. I want to get right into Jordan Love because it's such a unique scenario with him taking the time to incubate and finally getting into the lineup. And I think we should have probably expected there to be some bumps along the way. But like you mentioned, when he turned it on, he turned it on. I want to give you some numbers here that are courtesy from the fantasy points data suite, some splits on Jordan Love. Weeks 1 through 11, comparing it to weeks 12 through 18. So weeks 1 through 11, Jordan Love, 18th in catchable throw percentage. Weeks 12 through 18, 3rd in catchable throw percentage. In off-target throw percentage, 21st, weeks 1 through 11, 4th, weeks 12 through 18. Turnover-worthy throw percentage, 26th, weeks 1 through 11, 2nd, weeks 12 through 18. I mean, the guy really turned it on, and I think that went hand in hand with his weapons evolving and becoming more prepared for their big roles. And you now look at Jordan Love as one of the bright young quarterbacks in the NFL, and you look at Green Bay, and maybe going into the season, you're like, really? You're going to have a bunch of like rookies and second-year players. None of them are first-round picks, and feel like this is the right way to support Jordan Love under these circumstances. Took a few weeks, but now, I look at Green Bay as one of the teams that have arguably the most exciting collection of deep, young playmakers at wide receiver and tight end. And they grew up right before our eyes, as I said in the open, and really turned it on down the stretch. And now we think very highly of Green Bay and their collection of quarterback, offensive skill players. And to me, it's just about seeing what the ceiling is, and I think we'll find that out this year.
There's so many different ways they can hit you, which I think that's the most attractive thing about it. And, you typically romanticize and covet a bona fide number one wide receiver for what they do for you. But I think the blend of all of these guys, whether it's Watson or Reed or Wicks or Doubs, is it Dobbs, Dubs? Did we decide which one it formally is?
You'll get yelled at either way.
Either way. And then the tight ends with Musgrave and Kraft, right? Like they're all explosive, respectfully explosive, but physical players, and I think that's the thing where there's an ability for separation depending on the routes that they run. There's an ability to win with the ball in their hands. There's an ability to break tackles. Like it's just a very well-rounded group of a lot of dynamic athletes with different body types that all kind of bring the same flavor. And I really love what that means for how they're able to attack you. What guy are you going to try to eliminate? And they'll say, okay, we'll go this way instead of that way because we're going to base it off of making you wrong because we have a lot of guys that can do the same kinds of things.
The only thing that it's not fun for is for fantasy purposes, right? Like you want to get some of these young playmakers. I mean, who's it going to be, right? You can't
even count on the running back that they're paying from fantasy purposes because they brought back A.J. Dillon and they drafted Marshawn Lloyd in the third round?
I think it was the fourth round, but still, it's a pretty good investment after paying Jacobs and Dillon to come back.
Right.
But like you mentioned, there's a complementary nature to these guys that all have, like you said, respectfully, like down the field ability. And I think that, even Luke Musgrave at tight end, like you want to talk about a true like vertical receiving threat, seam buster, that type of player with Dobbs who wins down the field and Watson and Reed, but those guys can also win short. But then don't sleep on Dontayvion Wicks, who looks really good himself. And I think you go back to his second to last season at Virginia, and you and I were both super high on Wicks. And then that offense became like an absolute disaster. And of course, that doesn't help a receiver like Wicks. So I know that we've not gotten to anything other than skill players and quarterback, but I felt like that's kind of the interesting thing with Green Bay. And like, candidly speaking, we'll probably talk about this a little bit more later on, scoring this roster with so many developing players that you feel like haven't told you their ceiling at this point, and there's a lot of room for that. That made for this process that we go through scoring these rosters numerically kind of difficult, because I think this is probably the team where you look at it and feel like there's more room for ceiling and growth and upward mobility than really any team we've done.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the offensive line. Let's talk about the defense here coming up, so be sure to stick with us. Summertime means baseball. The NBA Finals just wrapped up, but of course, NFL is going to be here soon. We still got a little bit more to go in the NHL. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet over at FanDuel, where you can bet on all the sports action. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from Finals MVP or to who's going to hit one out of the park. And they got some fun Packers stuff you can check out. Look at these. Jordan Love plus 1,400 to be the NFL MVP. That's actually tied with two-time league MVP Lamar Jackson for fifth best odds. They have Jordan Love's passing yards set at 30,800. So you think he's going to get more than that? Go smash the over. They have the Packers win total set at 9.5, and the Packers at plus 195 to win the NFC North, second best odds behind the Lions. So check it all out. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Just a quick note on the offensive side of the ball before we move on, particularly the skill group. I think that one of the defining variables for them this season, I do think, is injuries. Christian Watson was a little bit of a difficult player to put into a bucket because the flashes have been so good, right? And he is, from an athletic skill set perspective, potentially a very dominating player, but hamstring issues. I know he did some research this offseason, found I think he had a 20% imbalance as far as weight distribution, as far as one leg versus the other. So getting that looked at, hopefully we'll get that long-standing hamstring issue for him sorted out. Zach Tom and Tucker Kraft had torn pecs this offseason in weightlifting. It sounds like they'll both be back in time for training camp, but just anytime you get like a muscle tear, it's something to just be mindful of and kind of keep your eyes out for. And you mentioned Luke Musgrave, really talented guy, but injuries have kind of always been a thing for him going back to Oregon State, right? And consistently being available. And he had a lacerated kidney last season and helped elevate Tucker Kraft into bigger playing time down the stretch when the Packers made their playoff run. So there are a number of guys that you put the footnote there and say, hey, let's make sure this guy's right before we get the season kicked off. Well,
you mentioned Zach Tom. I'm assuming
he's a stud.
And he's good, right? And you kind of knew it at Wake Forest. And then I think he kind of went to a great spot in Green Bay, where Green Bay's been very deliberate and intentional about tapping into versatility, and kind of some of that's probably due to need because they've had so much attrition to their offensive line over the last 3-4 years. But I think they got an answer here at right tackle, man. He's really, really smooth, athletic, coordinated, controlled, stayed square. I don't think he's ever going to be like a consistent mauler, but I'll take the consistency in terms of technique, body control, execution all day long for what he provides. And I think you look at him and, of course, Elgton Jenkins, Josh Myers at center, and you feel like you got three really nice building blocks for this offensive line. And then from there, it's, all right, what do we have in Jordan Morgan, who I know that they're tinkering around with what the best spot for him is. And then, of course, Rasheed Walker, who got a ton of playing time last year at left tackle. I think that's where this offensive line, that's the margins for this offensive line, but you feel good about Tom, Myers, Jenkins as your three kind of building blocks for that offensive line with some young players that we need to learn about.
Can I complain, get on my soapbox here for a minute?
Yeah.
Through mandatory minicamp, Morgan's got looks at left tackle, left guard, right tackle. Rookie offensive lineman. Played tackle at college. Can we pick a spot? Like, I know the versatility is appealing, but if you're going to put Jordan Morgan in the best position to play well this year, I don't know how you feel about that. And I know cross-training, like every coach is a little different in the league as far as how they covet The ability to play multiple spots is obviously critical. Elgton Jenkins has been a poster child of positional flexibility for since Bakhtiari first started having injuries.
Yeah.
Was it 3 years ago? He played left tackle the whole season because Bakhtiari couldn't go, and he was a guard before that. I don't know, it's like your first round investment. I would just love for him to be put in a position to, when you get to training camp, decide based off of what your assessment was, where your best opportunity is for him, and let him stick to it and learn it. Because if he's got to learn multiple positions, and part of that's a position change where now he's got to play inside, this is a lot to absorb in a short amount of time. And I've seen offensive line, I've experienced it firsthand. College offensive tackle drafted to play inside, but then they changed their mind. He plays a tackle, and then the next year he plays inside. And it's ruined some guys. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Jordan Morgan, but it's, as you look at this offensive line, you're like, all right, like Jenkins can play anywhere. Zach Tom realistically can play anywhere. Rasheed Walker was really promising in the back half of the season last year with how he developed as a rookie, a late round rookie who I didn't think was particularly good in the first half of the year, but kind of stabilized across the back half of the 800 plus snaps that he took last year. Josh Myers has some guard center flex. Obviously, is the incumbent center. Get your combination figured out and give Morgan a chance to be a really successful rookie starter for you, and not just a long-term player that you're going to use this year to kind of figure out where he's going to be.
Yeah, I'd agree with a lot of that. I mean, especially the first round pick. Surely right. You drafted him with some intent. And I think it's fine to take some time to sort it out and kind of see, okay, where do we like him best? But to your point, like training camp, let's find his spot. And if he's your left tackle, he's your left tackle. If he's your right guard, he's your right guard. But give him, set him up for success, especially because don't love the depth here with this offensive line.
Right.
They've Andre Dillard, disaster. I don't love Royce Newman. Sean Ryan, who is he? Right. I liked him coming out of UCLA, but it kind of platooned at times, and we need to learn more there. Caleb Jones, Jacob Monk. Like, I don't think you need any of these guys to get hurt. And because I don't love what you have backing them all up. So
is the way we have left tackle through right tackle on our sheet right now, is that the best? Like, would that be the best combination of five guys for you in your mind?
I would think their best combination of five is Walker, Jenkins, Myers, Morgan, Tom. Yes. Unless Morgan's just not ready, and then you start Sean Ryan.
Right. I feel like they have the kind of this superpower where Jenkins and Tom can play four spots. I mean, they kind of feel like they've alluded to Tom could play five spots.
Yeah.
So that kind of opens the door for, is Sean Ryan or Royce Newman, is that your next guy up? Because you'd look at it and say, hey, maybe we wish we had a better swing tackle. But if three guys in your starting lineup can play tackle, and if Rasheed Walker goes down, it's okay. Elgton Jenkins can kick out, or okay, Zach Tom can flip over and play on the other side. So I do feel like that helps the depth issue a little bit. But if they get pigeonholed, I agree with you. The guys that are kind of the de facto, like, second on the depth chart in each of the spots, they don't have a lot of fluidity with right now to feel like they're getting guys that are good players. And I think it was probably a good call to let John Runyon walk for the
$10 million
price, the price that he got from the Giants to sign a free agency.
Right.
But that was another guy who you felt had a little bit of flexibility and was turned into an adequate starter for them. So that's the kind of the transition they're doing with up front.
All right, let's I want to ask you a question here on the offense. Let's do the defense the whole next segment. I do have to tell them myself, so I have that queued up.
Great.
All right, this is on the spot. Who leads this team in targets, and how many do they get?
I would say Jayden Reed. Just because I think he came in at a level that was above what Doubs had, and I'll believe Christian Watson's going to play a full season when he plays a full season.
Who do you think that Doubs had 96 last year? Reed had 94 in 16 games, and then the next highest was Wicks with 58. Do you think that they have two guys over 100? Is it Doubs and Reed?
I think Christian Watson's got a good chance, but he's got to prove he can play. a full season.
It's fascinating. We didn't even talk about Josh Jacobs. They signed.
Right.
They made a big transition.
They signed the 2021 or
rushing
2022
king, right?
rushing champion to a big contract. There's not a lot of big contracts that are given out for a running back to change teams.
Yeah. Moving on from Aaron Jones.
We got a couple of those this year. I think that's the thing. Aaron Jones frees up about 40 targets.
I mean, those probably just go to Jacobs, right? Like,
should they though?
Yeah, I think you want to target your starting running back 40 times.
Okay, well then AJ Dillon got 28 targets. Great. He can. Jacobs can have those.
No, that's a fascinating layer. That's like where are the vacated targets? You know, they're not here.
Right.
They're not here.
Doubs, Reed, Wicks, Watson. This is in order. Musgrave. Jones is the first one off, and he had 43 targets last year. Kraft is back. Dillon's back. Bo Melton's back. Malik Heath's back. Samari Torrey and Patrick Taylor.
Yeah, you got 17 from Patrick Taylor and Josiah Dewara's 8. There you go. Those are your vacated targets. I guess he's just maybe. I mean, threw it the ball 579 times. That's a lot of throws. So, oh man, it's gonna be fun. Fun to see the Packers offense evolve and see if they share the ball to this level, or is there going to be a true pecking order that's defined? All right, we're talking defense. Packers defense. That was a big deal last year. We'll get into all of that here on the other side of it, so be sure to stick with us.
Please throw yourself under the bus.
This is the best I can come up with on the spot. You know what I mean?
Dude, you've had 21 minutes.
Right, but I mean,
minutes.
I don't do well focusing on more than one thing at a time. Here's my throw myself under the bus. We purchased a new couch, me and my wife, and we purchased this couch back in March. Okay, it's we knew that it was supposed to come in May, and then it got back ordered, and it's supposed to come tomorrow. It's coming tomorrow on Wednesday. So we had our family over on Sunday, and we were discussing this couch. And, we had to get rid of the old couch and this transition and all that. And so somebody asked the question, my sister-in-law asked the question, well, what does the couch look like? And it started describing the new couch. And I said, it was a certain color of brown. We have an ottoman. I said, hey, I think it's the same color as this ottoman right here. And my wife goes, no, it's not that color at all. She says, it's more of like a light tan. It's definitely not brown. And I was like, no, I think I'm right about this. So then I remember that I took a picture of the couch at the store. Yeah.
It's light brown.
I didn't have a clue what color it was.
You should have known as soon as the missus disputed. You should have known that you were in trouble.
Yeah, but
I'm sure she's planning on the couch is a big part of a living room, right?
Right, and she doesn't want to get any garnishments or pillows or even a new ottoman. She wants to get it in there and look at it first.
Yep, and then see how it fits with what you have, and then what other stuff do we need to tinker with the curtains or the other accent colors across the living room? She's been playing it. She's been playing.
My wife, I love her to death, but she's not a great details person. You know what I mean? So I didn't put it.
She's fired up about the couch.
Right. I think this is somewhere where she's solidified the details. So she's probably mad at me. She can listen. Right outside.
Right, listening. So, if she comes in and storms in and smacks you on the head,
we'll know what's going on. All right. Hey, the Packers survived Joe Barry. It's over. He's gone. You don't have to deal with it.
That's my linebackers coach.
Hey, he's probably a better linebackers coach than he is over.
He's got a crazy good track record as a linebackers coach and a really bad track record as a defensive coordinator.
So get him back where he's good, right?
It was the weird thing with that transition for them is they just traded coaches with Miami. Because Anthony Campanile, was the linebackers coach in Miami, and he left and took the job in Green Bay. And then Joe Barry left and took the linebackers job in Miami. So they did a swap there. And you guys will love Anthony Campanile.
I heard he's close to becoming a coordinator, right? He's just got to.
Yeah, he's been on the doorstep for the past couple of years, but getting out of that system, I think, or that situation where he was kind of in the Flores system, and then there was an extension with a different coordinator that ran it, and then he interviewed, and they went with Vic Fangio because they wanted experience and they wanted scheme change. It just didn't work out.
Well, but Jeff Hafley said, you know what, I don't want to be the head coach of Boston College anymore.
I wouldn't want to either.
We had a 7-win season. We won a bowl game.
NIL's a mess.
Let's see here. When was the last time Boston College won a bowl game prior to this past year?
Was it the Matt Ryan group?
It's 2016.
So no, it was not the Matt Ryan won MVP that year.
They've won 2 bowl games since 2008. So they beat SMU in the Fenway. What is it? The Fenway Bowl or something? I don't remember. That's not important. Jeff Hafley said, "I don't want to be the head coach of Boston College anymore. I want to be the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers." That makes it a really interesting unknown dynamic. But I think if there's something I would be excited about, it's that you've seen more and more college stuff enter the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff Hafley, he is a college coach, but he was in the league for a while, right? He was in the NFL from 2006 until 2018, basically, right? So it's not like the NFL is foreign to him. So he kind of gets to take all that he learned during that stretch of time, and then what he learned in college, and now apply it all to this opportunity. And I got a chance to go to ACC Media Day every year, and I've always really enjoyed Jeff Hafley in the way he talks and the way that he discusses his program and his players. And I mean, for those reasons, he seems really appealing to me. But I know that Joe Barry's not a very popular name in the world of Green Bay Packers, and they don't have to deal with him anymore.
Yeah, and obviously the Hafley experience, you see the personnel changes that have been made, and you can already kind of start to see how it's going to be different. Kind of get a feeling it's going to be pretty safety-driven defense with signing Xavier McKinney to a almost $17 million a year annual average salary contract, drafting Bullard in the second round, which is an outstanding pick and outstanding value. Is one of my favorite prospects in this year's class. Another one of my favorite prospects in this year's class was Kitano Ladapo, who they got on day 3. And then even the pick of Edgerrin Cooper at linebacker, who from a passing down perspective brings a lot of length and range and explosiveness, and that to foil with kind of this athletic but sledgehammer type player in Quay Walker, I think gives you a lot of middle of the field versatility. And that's where I think Packers fans should be really excited about what this has the potential to look like, with all of those guys kind of as the core of your pass coverage. And Hafley's background as an NFL coach was with defensive backs, right? So he's got his fingerprints all over what they did this offseason in the secondary.
Yeah, I think they wanted some dynamic athletes that could play in space in the middle of the field, man, and they got them. There's no question that's what they have at safety and linebacker. I'm interested at corner for this team. Obviously, Jaire Alexander, franchise cornerstone, one of the best in the league. But Eric Stokes, I think he's an X factor for this defense, where for the last 2 seasons he's been kind of banged up, and I don't think they have the depth that they've had. Right, they traded away Rasul Douglas last year. And now it's kind of like Carrington Valentine, Corey Ballantyne as the depth players at corner. They need a healthy Eric Stokes this year. I think that's going to be one of the big X factors for this defense. And for him to, you go back to his rookie season, we felt really good about it. And then the last 2 years, he has not built upon that. We need that to manifest itself here in 2024.
Can we just, I know we're supposed to be talking about the roster, but you mentioned Jeff Hafley's background, being in the league since up to 2018. And he was a part of the Chip Kelly San Francisco 49ers staff, but then he stayed on for a year in 18 when Shanahan came over. I'm just looking at this coaching staff.
Go ahead.
Do you know all the names?
I don't, but I'm sure you're going to name a bunch of guys that are guys.
Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, Mike LaFleur, Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans.
Oh, my.
Bobby Slowick.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Hafley. There's a few other names on here, too. Adam Stenovich. Chris Kiffin. The list goes on.
Hell of a coaching staff.
Outrageous coaching staff.
So they went from, that was the immediate staff after Chip Kelly?
They fired Tom Sula in 15.
Oh, I forgot about Tom Sula.
So Chip came in 16. Did he last 2 years?
What was the weirder head coaching hire, David Culley or Jim Tom Sula? Probably Tom Sula, man.
Probably Tom Sula.
At least Coley can get through a press conference, right?
So Shanahan came in 17. So he's had 2-year overlap with Hafley in San Francisco, but he was a holdover from the Chip Kelly defense. Also, like Rich Scangarello was on that coaching staff too. I digress.
What do you think about this front? That's kind of the only piece of this defense we haven't discussed.
A lot of young guys that I think you can feel excited about, with Van Ness on the edge and Enikbari on the edge to go with a veteran in Preston Smith and a healthy Rashan Gary, hopefully this year from start to finish, is kind of the centerpiece player in that. And he's turned into a really good talent. I know there was a lot of narratives and questions about how good he was coming out of Michigan, and it took him a little bit of time as far as what weight he was going to play at. Was he going to play inside or outside? Well, he has really found himself as an NFL player. He is a force on the edge. So those guys to go with Carl Brooks as a hybrid-ish type, undersized.
He flashed a bit last
but
year. Yeah.
What he did at Bowling Green, he did at times in small spurts in Green Bay last year. I think that's the thing that I'm excited about is you have a couple of veterans that I think are maybe on the decline of their peaks between Preston Smith and Kenny Clark, but the youth around it, it's all ascending talent, and it kind of mirrors what you have on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, Devonte Wyatt's a player that I'm excited about there as well. I thought he kind of took a big step last year, and I think there's a lot more there. That's a player I'd be very excited about, and how he pairs with Kenny Clark. I mean, that's a good group, man. You could give Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, Devonte Wyatt, Rashan Gary. I mean, that's a good front.
Van Ness, Enikbari,
it's a good
Carl
front.
Brooks. Yeah,
it's a good front.
And
no
it's ascending. And the Packers, for us, at the end of the day, they're a team that has a lot of pink on the depth chart. And what we mean by that is that's the color code that we have for incomplete evaluations. Now, we kind of signify we put you in a quality starter or an adequate starter based off of right now, but it's still like to be determined what bucket we're definitively going to put you in. And that means for Green Bay, it's a team that has a lot of upward mobility. And as far as the actual scoring of these players, there's so much youth and this youth movement that they've been in. And you consider they're in an interesting spot as a team because you have all of this youth. You have a quarterback that's coming into his second year, but you're talking about potentially doing a quarterback extension with him that would reset the market based off of a 1-year starter sample size. And what that means for, well, you're not really paying a lot of the other guys because you have so much youth, but typically that youth movement involves a longer leash before you have to do the big quarterback contract. So this is a really interesting intersection of team building ideology with quarterback window, with overall team life cycle and competitive nature of trying to peak your competitive windows, right? You saw that with the Baltimore Ravens last year. We're a team that had a lot of talent. They knew they were going to lose some talent, but you try to peak and then you compete through the transition and then you try to peak again in 3-4 years. I think the Packers are a team that, like, if it all clicks this year, it could be a peak year for them, even though there's so much youth, just because that Jordan Love contract potentially won't hit you with a ton of bricks in 2025. But you'll probably start to feel it in 2026. And then in 2027, you're not going to be able to afford to pay some guys that you would otherwise.
I like the word ascending. That's
ascending.
A good, yeah. But the range of outcomes, I mean, I'm going to predict the Packers to go to the playoffs. And I think highly of them, but like, we'll find out.
If you told me they won the North this year, it wouldn't surprise me.
Right.
Like, I think that highly of them. And obviously like Detroit, we love Detroit and what they've been doing, but
Friday's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Because we're going to put them all, rank them all in all the position rooms, and we'll do that on Tier Maker, and you can find that on Friday. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino, and we are out of here.